Hello everyone, wherever you are around the world, welcome to the top 8 of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. I'm your host Rich Hagan, sitting alongside the Pro Tour historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall, from Inside R&D, Mr. Ian Duke, and from the trenches of the Pro Tour itself, gold level pro from Slovakia, Matej Big Z Zatlkaj. Matej, welcome to the desk, lovely to have you here. We're going to get all their insight into some terrific matchups here on our final day of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. But we've already had 2 days BDM in the books, as we say, so what stood out to you from 16 rounds of Swiss here at the Pro Tour?
I mean, just how powerful this Eldrazi deck is. I mean, just watching people, we talked to Jacob Wilson, we did a deck tech with him about the Channel Fireball face-to-face games Eldrazi deck, and he talked about fast mana. He talked about the fast mana in the format and how players just love to run through that door. If you give them fast mana, they're going to open that door, they're going to run through it, and they're going to play with all the toys. And that team just absolutely and utterly dominated this Pro Tour. They have 10 players out of their 20 in the top 25 of this tournament. They have 3 players in the top 8. It's just utter domination. It's possibly the most dominant performance by a team at a Pro Tour that we've seen.
It is an extraordinary accomplishment. Ian, from your perspective, from Inside R&D and from watching in the booth all weekend, what's your takeaway from the first couple of days?
It's got to be the Eldrazi, Rich.
Yep.
I mean, 6 of the top 8, that's super scary. There's no question that deck is powerful. There are a couple different ways to build it. That said, we've only got 1 tournament under our belt. Curious to see how the top 8 turns out and how people adjust going forward to this new Eldrazi menace.
Okay, and Matej, a unique perspective because you were there round in, round out, and you had a tremendously interesting deck yourself with the Death Shadow aggro within that team. How was the 2 days for you?
It was fun. It was mainly good and limited because I did go 6-0, so Constructed didn't go as well.
Sick brags.
Yeah, congratulations.
I had to put that in since I'm on camera. But yeah, overall, I was also impressed by the Eldrazi deck, naturally, but I'm very impressed by the team that consists of Andrew Brown and JC Tao, that are in top 8, playing a slightly different version and rocking the tournament. 4 players on the deck and sporting a 70% plus win percentage with the deck is also very impressive.
They had a 95% win percentage on day 1 with the deck.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
Utterly extraordinary. All right, so why don't we mark your card for what's coming your way here at the Pro Tour. Let's take a look at our top 8 bracket and we'll explain the way things are going to work as we head down the day. Well, first up, we're going to have both Shuhei Nakamura with his Colorless Eldrazi against Jiachen Tao with Blue-Red Eldrazi, and at the same time in the feature match area, you'll see Scott-Vargas with Colorless Eldrazi against Pascal Maynard from Canada with Affinity. We'll bounce back and forth between those 2 matches, and then once they're done, we'll head on down to the bottom half of the bracket. And again, both Andrew Brown with Blue-Red Eldrazi and Patrick Dittman with Affinity, they'll battle at the same time as Even Flock with Colorless Eldrazi and Frank Lepore with his Processor Eldrazi deck. So quarterfinals 1 and 2 together, quarterfinals 3 and 4 together. Once we hit the afternoon, the top half of the bracket, that'll be semi-final 1. You'll see every turn of every game in that one, and then the same for semi-final 2, and of course, every turn of the final. So let's turn our attention to quarterfinals 1 and 2. Let's begin with Shuhei Nakamura, the Hall of Famer from Japan. There you see him, 34 years old. $1,000 for every day of the year in his lifetime earnings. You see, this is his 6th Pro Tour top 8. The Player of the Year from 2008, 7 Grand Prix titles. Let's take a look at his deck. There you have it, the Colorless Eldrazi deck, and it is just packed full of Oath of the Gatewatch cards, as you can see there. Matter Reshapers there, Eldrazi Mimic, Reality Smasher, Thought Not Seer. So Ian, give us a sense of what's going on with this deck. What's it doing?
Yeah, so this is Channel Fireball's version of the Eldrazi deck. Really, to me, the hallmark of this deck is the inclusion of Simian Spirit Guide and Chalice of the Void. These are 2 cards that did a ton of work for the team over the weekend. Simian Spirit Guide, of course, just letting you get really aggressive draws that come out faster than your opponent, playing big Eldrazi and beating down, getting Thought Not Seer out before your opponent's combo gets online. And then Chalice of the Void is just an extremely versatile card. It's useful against almost every deck in the field, really capable of shutting off especially 1-drops from your opponent's deck, of which this deck contains none.
Yeah, I was just saying, not terribly useful in this matchup.
That's right, yeah.
Matej, every time someone comes up with a new deck, As an opponent, you have to learn what's going on. Is this a fairly easy deck to grasp when it's on the other side of the table? When people start playing it on Magic Online, are we going to have a lot of learning to do about what this deck's doing if they're on the other side from us?
I wouldn't say so, because the deck is mostly creatures anyway, so it's a sorcery speed kind of deck. So you can pretty easily count the mana that they need to play their spells, so you can get a good grasp of like what they do in their turns, and there's not that much interaction. And since they're fully colorless, they don't even have the sideboard cards that can do anything special. I mean, we saw the gut shots and the dismembers. Okay, they were good, that was great, but there's not much more.
Okay, so let's take a look at Jiachen Tao. See here in his first Pro Tour top 8 from Team East-West Bowl. An incredible performance by them. It is his first Pro Tour top 8, and you see he went 9-1 in Modern, and astonishingly, that isn't even the best Modern record in the top 8. These people have really dominated the tournament in Modern. Let's take a look at Tao's deck list for you, and this time it's the blue-red flavor of the Eldrazi. Matej, what's going on here?
Yeah, it looks like a little bit like a draft deck, because it contains some of the cards which we certainly did not expect to see in Modern. So it's very similar to the previous deck, but it does have a blue-red colored mana base, which means that it has Vile Aggregates, Ruination Guide, as well as Eldrazi Sky Spawner, and it could also leverage Eldrazi Obligator, which is a nice way to put out even a lot more damage than you would expect.
Ian, any sense in this matchup of who's advantaged? We've got the blue-red Eldrazi as opposed to the colorless Eldrazi.
Yeah, talking to a lot of players this weekend, seems like the consensus is the blue-red deck is advantaged here. Some notable things, Drowner of Hope, I think, is the key card here. Being able to tap down your opponent's big creatures, punch through for a lot of damage. If the game ends up in a board stall, just having Eldrazi Sky Spawner, even though it's a small creature, being able to fly over is a big deal. And then the other major card is Eldrazi Obligator, stealing a Reality Smasher and just crashing in for a ton of damage. That's a big game.
All right, so colorless Eldrazi against blue-red Eldrazi. What about quarterfinal 2? Here's one of the most hallowed players in the history of the game, Louis Scott-Vargas. He's in the Hall of Fame, of course he is. First, the champion of Pro Tour Berlin in 2008. 432 lifetime pro points, 15 Grand Prix top 8s, 6 Pro Tour top 8s, and looking for that second title here. Let's take a look at his deck. It is colorless Eldrazi, and if you're thinking that looks very similar to Shuhei Nakamura's, it is exactly the same as Shuhei Nakamura's. They are teammates, they worked on the deck together. So BDM, what's going on here? Talk about Luis.
Well, I mean, this is Luis's first top 8 since 2011. And I think a huge exhale from Luis. He's had some great finishes, but you know, you could tell it was, if you follow him on social media, you could tell it was sort of starting to nibble at him that he hadn't gotten this far. As much as he enjoys being in the booth, he much more enjoys being under the lights.
That is certainly true. Now he is up against Pascal Maynard of Canada. Let's take a look at Pascal's resume. East-West Bowl again, still only 22. He's been around forever, it seems. 117 lifetime pro points and so many Grand Prix top 8s, 2 titles in 2015, as you see, Mexico City and Buenos Aires. And then when he made it into his first Pro Tour top 8 last night, he just came to the desk and said, finally. Let's have a look at Pascal Maynard's deck, and this is very different. This is Affinity, and Matej, talk to us through Affinity for people who haven't really seen this deck before.
Yeah, I mean, the deck's been around since 2003, and everyone should know it by now, but it has gotten a couple of editions over the years, and but still, it's unload your hand as quickly as possible with all the various artifacts and start smashing in the air with a big creature with, thanks to cranial plating or Arcbound Ravager, even Master of Ethereum, just big guys early and fast.
I think it's pretty interesting about Affinity in general is that people were always like, well, it's a good Swiss deck, but you get worried about getting it into the top 8 where you get 5 games, 4 of which are sideboarded. But there's not a ton of sideboard hate for that deck in this field.
Yeah, I think Affinity is the best Game 1 deck overall in Modern.
Well, we will see what happens because the players are ready. It is time to strap ourselves in. Shuhei Nakamura against Jiachen Tao and Louis Scott-Vargas against Pascal Maynard. It's time to begin the quarterfinals of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch.
And hello there, welcome to the booth here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. Marshall Sutcliffe, I got Randy Buehler down on the end, and I'd like to welcome Frank Karsten to the booth as well here at the PT. Welcome, Frank.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you. We've brought in our resident Affinity expert here to give us some insights since there are 2 copies of the Infinity deck here in the top 8. All right, gentlemen, I know you're excited. I know you're excited at home as well. Let's head down to the feature match area for our first of all quarterfinal matches here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Frank Karsten and Randy Buehler, and we're ready for our first pair of quarterfinals here. We're going to be running these side by side, but we're going to be holding the matches to make sure that you guys don't miss any important moments on air here. We're going to start off on the right-hand side of the feature match area there, where we've got Pascal Maynard. He comes from Canada. He plays for Team East West Bowl, and this is his first Pro Tour Top 8. He does have 9 GP Top 8s. He's a professional Magic player who has an extensive resume, but this is his first time making it into the Pro Tour Top 8. Now, his opponent, well, this is definitely not his first Pro Tour Top 8. This is, in fact, number 6. That is Luis Scott-Vargas from Team Channel Fireball. You can tell how excited he is to get started here. And we're going to get rumbling. The matchup, let's talk about it, gentlemen. I'll start with you, Randy. Colorless Eldrazi has to be the deck of the tournament.
Oh, without a doubt. This deck has destroyed this tournament. It's been very impressive the whole time. And, yeah, I mean, it's card-for-card identical copies, 3 of them from the Channel Fireball face-to-face alliance.
Now, on the other side of the table, Pascal Maynard is running good old Affinity. So, Frank, you know, that's a deck that you have played. In fact, you played in this tournament. You've played it many times, put a lot of work in on it. How do you feel this matchup is going to go from Pascal's perspective?
I feel it is a favorable matchup for Pascal. Generally speaking, the Affinity deck is a bit better at putting out a lot of creatures early, making them bigger, faster than the Eldrazi deck. And another big factor is that a lot of the creatures in the Affinity deck have evasion. Flying, for instance, Volt Scourge, which is huge because most of Luis's creatures cannot block them.
Okay, now you can see that Luis kicked things off with a Ratchet Bomb. Pascal actually did kick things off on his side of the table with a Vault Scourge here.
Yeah, I definitely like the keep by Pascal. When you're playing Affinity, what you're looking for in an opening hand is, well, at least 2 sources of mana, something to play on turn 1, like in this case a Volt Scourge, and some big payoff card, like either Arcbound Ravager, Cranial Blading, Steel Overseer, or Master of Ethereum. And Pascal's hand had all of those elements. Now the Ratchet Bomb can kill the Volt Scourge as well as an impactful 2-drop. So Pascal has to take care not to add too much to the board to make the Ratchet Bomb too good.
Well, 2 Signal Pests, that might tempt Luis into cracking that Ratchet Bomb as he puts a counter on it on the end step and draws his card for the turn. He's got a pair of Eldrazi Temples here, Randy, and he's surveying the scene. Is that a little too tempting there to just take out the 2 Signal Pests here?
I mean, I think it's pretty clearly bait. Pascal wants him to blow up the 2 1s so that he can hold on to his 2 mana cards. I mean, Cranial Plating is the payoff card in Pascal's hand, so Luis has to figure out, okay, I think Luis is going to see that as bait, and I don't know, though. It's still a 2-for-1.
That's very tempting.
Yeah, it's tempting.
As far as
That's the
bait
right word
goes.
for it.
Yeah. All right, so here's an endless one, and you can see the power of this deck. This is turn 3, and that is not one of Luis's best cards, and he just made a 5/5. Welcome.
The problem is
to Modern.
That if Luis doesn't activate the Ratchet Bomb to deal with the Signal Pest here, he's going to take a ton of damage, especially because Pascal can also potentially activate the Blinkmont Nexus and then get so many...
What is that, 8 damage if he activates the Nexus?
It is indeed... no, it's 10, I believe.
10?
1, 2, 3... Or it might be 8. 1, 2, 3 is the bonus that every individual Signal Pest gives, and then the 2 creatures with 1 power, so that would indeed be 8. But yeah, like, Luis cannot keep on taking 8 damage a turn. He might just be forced to activate the Ratchet Bomb for 1.
And it does look like Pascal's going to force that issue here. He says, okay, I'm going to put my Blink Moth up. And this really forces Luis to do this now before the creatures get to turn sideways and those Signal Pest bonuses kick in.
Wow. We already have a game result on the other table?
Yeah, we've got a match update. Shuhei Nakamura played 3 Thought-Knot Seers, sounds like, in game 1.
That is 1 on turn 2 and 2 on turn 3.
Yeah. This deck is something else, and in fact, finds a way to win that game against JC Tao. So Shuhei Nakamura, one to the good here.
Temple Eye is how you do that, for the record.
So interestingly, Pascal activated the Blinkmon Nexus, planning to attack if his Signal Pest would not be blown up. But after Luis activated the Ratchet Bomb, he just tapped it for mana afterwards.
All right.
And meanwhile, Luis is like, yeah, whatever, here's 10.
Here's a Reality Smasher. You take 10. And you can see that Luis has kind of turned the corner here on Pascal and is now taking the more aggressive route.
Yeah, but that lifelink on Signal on the Vault Scourge is going to be huge. One of the Vault Scourges is going to carry a Cranial Plating. That's going to be a ton of lifelink. So I would still say that Pascal is ahead in the race.
But Luis has a Dismember in his hand.
Ooh. Yeah, that will change the game completely.
I mean, Pascal's play looks pretty solid here. He baited out the Ratchet Bomb. He gets to put his Cranial Plating onto Vault Scourge. If he gets in this lifelink hit, it totally changes the race.
Yeah, Pascal does not have double black up to instant speed equip the plating to a Vault Scourge that still survives.
Yeah, good point.
So Luis can prevent Pascal from gaining any life this turn. Luis is still at a pretty healthy 18.
Yeah, he's just going to wait for Pascal to attack first.
Pascal may use that Ornithopter and the Springleaf Drum to activate the Blink Moth here.
Yep.
I think Pascal is also thinking
He
whether
might need to block.
Yeah, whether or not the 1 Vault Scourge without the plating can actually attack this turn, or whether it needs to stay back as a blocker with a Cranial Plating equipped on Luis's turn. I don't think Pascal can really beat the Dismember, so he should not worry about that. But looks like he feels like he's still ahead in the race if he attacks with the Vault Scourge here.
Yeah, he can chump block, of course, with that Blink Moth on the Endless one to save 5 damage. And he's going to attack with both of them and pass priority over to Luis, and Luis has to figure out how he wants to proceed here.
It seems like Luis
It's a pretty straightforward Dismember,
wants
right?
to just deny Pascal the ability to gain life here in this damage race.
Especially since the other lifelinker is also tapped and can't block wearing your Cranial Plating. It's funny. I think this... So is Luis thinking here to represent that he's got more options than the one just straightforward Dismember option?
I mean, Luis might also be thinking, okay, what happens if I take the damage, and then afterwards Pascal will obviously equip the Cranial Plating to the Ornithopter?
Sure.
Maybe what if I just kill the Ornithopter such that Pascal won't be in a position to block any of my creatures?
Do you really want to take the... There's so much life gain, though, for Pascal. So, yeah, Luis does decide he cannot afford to let Pascal gain all that life.
So Dismember is going to hit Vault Scourge wearing Cranial Plating. He's going to take 1 damage in this sequence, but 4 from the Dismember. So Luis does take a total of 5 this turn to drop down to 13. Pascal's going to go up to 9.
Oh, yeah, okay. And now 13. I'm at 9.
Pascal does equip. This means that if Luis can find a way to get that Ornithopter out of the way, he just wins on the spot. Or to make a second Reality Smasher.
Off the top.
Boom.
He can even use Simian Spirit Guide to add Mutavault to the attack if he wants to, but doesn't need it.
And that should do it for game 1. Luis Scott-Vargas defeats Pascal Maynard here. So we have both... We've got both Luis Scott-Vargas and Shuhei Nakamura taking down their game 1s here for Team Channel Fireball. All right, we'll be back right after these messages.
Ultra Pro is the place to go for all of your Magic accessories. With card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios showing off the best Magic art, Ultra Pro is the standard in safe storage. Visit ultrapro.com for more information.
And welcome back to the feature match area here in Atlanta. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Randy Bueller and Frank Karsten. And we're going to jump over and get game 2 here with Shuhei Nakamura and JC Tao. You can take a look at Shuhei here. Again, he had one of those really broken draws, Randy, for this type of deck in game 1 and just ran over JC. Even though, you know, talking to the players yesterday and today, most of them think that JC is favored a bit in this matchup here with the blue-red version of this Eldrazi deck.
Yeah, the consensus seems to be that blue-red Eldrazi is favored, and the key card is the Drowner of Hope. Dr. Owner, they call it.
Really?
Yeah, Dr. Owner. It's right there on the card. D-R-O.
Dr. Owner. I like that. All right, well, JC is going to kick things off here with a Sky Spawner. There's a 3-drop on the other side, and you can see the different directions that each player decided to go here. It's a Matter Reshaper for Nakamura, both of them with land plus Eye of Ugin. Eye of Ugin, probably the most powerful card in the deck. It can consistently make huge amounts of mana, and here we go. Turn 3 Reality Smasher.
Thanks to the Scion. Sacrifices the Scion from Sky Spawner. Sky Spawner is another key card in this matchup because the colorless Eldrazi deck can't deal with flyers. Like that, it's only 2 power, but if the ground gets into anything resembling a stall, that actually adds up and can swing a game. Eldrazi Obligator is the other card that can really swing a game out of the blue-red deck. Come down, steal the big creature. That ground stall is suddenly an extra large monster on one side and fewer to defend with.
That's a good point. After sideboard, the board can easily get into a ground stall, especially because Shuhei...
Oh,
discards
Shuhei
3
has
cards!
So he used a Simian Spirit Guide to make a mana, and then he used Dismember, and also had to discard because that is a Reality Smasher, and he discarded a Ghost Quarter. So I gotta feel like JC Tao maybe at first a little bummed he's losing his Smasher, and then realizing, you know, that's not that bad for me at all.
Well...
hello.
Smasher back the other way.
Right, and of course this is off of, again, some really cool land interactions here. This one being Urborg, allowing Eye of Ugin to now tap for mana as well as reduce costs. So right back at you, JC. And
interestingly, by the way, JC gets to coast off of Shuhei's Urborg. His Eye now taps for black. He doesn't even play Urborg in the blue-red list, but suddenly he gets more mana too.
Okay, well, it's going to be a Sky Spawner here to start the turn for JC Tao.
I don't think Shuhei's going to regret that Simian Spirit Guide that he had to lose, but the Ghost Quarter, if this game does go long at all, he's going to wish he could Ghost Quarter JC's Eye.
Yeah, we have seen that fight happen. These decks aren't particularly good at activating Eye of Ugin for 7, but they can get there when these games stall out, and that becomes the difference maker.
Yeah, and even in the short term, it's a 3-mana land, right?
Totally.
It's Mishra's Workshop right now.
Ratchet Bomb here for Nakamura. Looks like
Kill
he's
your
going to
Scion?
crack it immediately just to take care of the Scion. Does JC have a response?
Yeah, I don't think Shuhei was happy to keep Ratchet Bomb in after sideboard, but he had a couple of Chalices and Ratchet Bombs in his main deck that, well, he all wanted to remove. He still had to keep some in.
Shuhei's keeping the beats flowing really strong here, and there is a Dismember now for Tao. He says trigger.
You're going to discard a land.
And it looks like JC feels like he's going to have to trade off for the Matter Reshaper. You never like doing that because you know that your opponent's gaining advantage where you're not, but he's got to do it to preserve his life total, and it ends up being a Spellskite. So 1 turn too late there for Nakamura. He does get in, though, with a Blink Moth for 1 to drop JC down to 11.
That Spellskite could be huge in this game in case JC has a Drowner of Hope.
Yep.
Because he can just soak up all the taps from the
Speak of
Eldrazi
the devil.
Scions.
You're getting good at this, Frank. There's a Drowner of Hope for JC right on time.
And Shuhei did add Oblivion Sour after sideboard, which means that the matchup could easily come down to a huge board stall with high toughness creatures, in which case that Eldrazi Sky Spawner that's still on JC's side of the board could become a pivotal element. Shuhei can deal with it via Blinkmon Nexus, but then he would lose a land in the process.
Hey, there's another Ghost Quarter for Shuhei. Looks like he's also got a Mutavault there.
Do I need to do that? No. Yours is already next to it. Oh, perfect. All right, I'm gonna go to my draw step.
Yeah, Shuhei's got to be tempted to block Sky Spawner now, but that takes him farther away from activating Eye of Ugin if he loses the land. It's a tricky spot.
Yeah, he's under a lot of pressure here, Randy, for sure. There's a Drowner of Hope crunching into the red zone as well. And it looks like Shuhei is going to activate Mutavault here.
Shuhei is in a really bad spot.
He's way behind here, right?
Yeah, he doesn't have an answer to the 5/5. His deck is filled with huge creatures, but he doesn't have any of them. He's already at a low life total, so he may just have to jump block in order to stay at an acceptable life total. Wait, so he's double blocking and then making the Blink Mod a 2/2, but then he's still presenting 4 power in
does
total.
he have a gut shot in his hand?
Ah.
He's got 3 of them in his sideboard.
That would explain it.
And he brought them in.
For lack of better options.
3 cards to deal with Dr. Owner.
And it's another Blink Moth off the top. Shuhei just plays it and passes the turn back. JC Tao looking to equalize this match and looking good on that goal here currently.
Yeah, Shuhei was just forced in really bad exchanges this game. First, the dismember on the Reality Smasher that forced a 3-for-1. Now again a 3-for-1 trade. Yeah, that's not a way to win a game of Magic.
Sideboarding, by the way, Shuhei did bring in 3 Oblivions over 3 Gutshot, like we expected. He took out all 4 Chalices, 1 Ratchet Bomb, 1 Spellskite.
Okay.
He then, of course, drew the other Ratchet Bomb and the other Spellskite.
Well, I think Shuhei just drew Reality Smasher here. Smash!
You got 4. Yeah.
Doesn't quite win this race, though, does he?
Let's see, he blocks the...
Yeah, he takes 2, and then he attacks JC down to 1, and then he gets killed on the crackback.
Yeah, but here we see Eye of Ugin being activated.
Yeah,
He's just going to go get a Reality Smasher and crunch in for 2 5-drops, and that is going to do it. So JC Tao picks up game number 2 here over Shuhei Nakamura to even up the match 1 game apiece.
JC Tao's sideboard plan there, by the way, 1 card.
1 card?
And it's crazy. It's land for land. On the play, he takes out his Gemstone Cavern and puts in Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. It's the only adjustment.
He's that well set up in game 1, huh?
And doesn't have a sideboard plan for the matchup. So yeah, it does feel like he's pre-sideboarded, though, to be fair.
Okay, let's jump back over to our other table here where we have Luis Scott-Vargas versus Pascal Maynard, and they are just getting kicked off in their game number 2. Again, Luis won game 1 of this match.
6 top 8s now.
Yeah, it's number 6, and there's Gutshot, a card that well, it's going to be near and dear to Luis's heart for a while. He did get into this top 8 off of a Gutshot.
It's a bit of an aggressive Gutshot, I would have to say, because Steel Overseer, Luis also knows this, is one of the best cards in the matchup. Okay, Luis had an answer for it anyway, so that explains it. But if Luis would just freely use Gutshot on the first Mem Knight and not have an answer for the Steel Overseer, that's a card he could easily lose the game to.
Wow, and look at this turn here. Simium Spirit Guide plus an Eye of Ugin leads to a Thought-Knot Seer for Luis Scott-Vargas, and he gets to take a look at a pretty stacked hand here, Frank. He's got Cranial Plating, Ravager, and a Master of Ethereum, I believe, is the last card there.
Yep, lots of big payoff cards. Now, Pascal doesn't have a ton of artifacts on the battlefield yet, just a lone Springleaf Drum. So, well, the Cranial Plating doesn't really do much yet. It will cost a lot of mana for Pascal to animate Blinkmont Nexus and then equip it. Arcbound Ravager doesn't have a lot of artifacts to feed on. And if that is indeed the Master of Ethereum, then Pascal cannot even cast it on the next turn. Sure, he has Springleaf Drum, but he needs to draw, say, either an Ornithopter or a Mem Knight or a Glimmer Void to be able to cast Master of Ethereum on the next turn. So none of the cards are amazing at this point. Luis just takes the Ravager out of the equation. It seems like Luis is really controlling the pace of the game here with 2 interactive cards, most notably dealing with the Steel Overseer. And now, yeah, Thought Not Seer, it presents a clock, it offers some further disruption. Luis did draw the Glimmer Void to cast the Master,
Yeah,
but it's currently
Pascal did, yeah.
it's only a 2/2. It can become 3/3 if Pascal taps the Master for mana to activate the Blinkbot Nexus, but that won't be big enough to block the Thought Not Seer. It might be big enough to block the Endless one. Pascal could just block and then post-combat, yeah, activate a Blinkbot.
So what does Luis do in response here?
Well, if he has another gut shot, then it would lead to a decent trade.
All right, well, it looks like that worked out pretty well for Pascal as the Endless one goes away, but there is a Dismember there.
Dismember kills the
Whoa.
Nexus, shrinking the Master to 2/2 so that it also dies from
Yeah.
having 2 damage on it.
Yeah, it looked good for a second there, but all of a
was
sudden
just-
it looks a lot worse for Pascal as now his board state is decimated.
That was a sweet line from Luis.
That
And he
was
saw it the
nice.
whole way. Set him up and then finished him off.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Luis wouldn't have made that attack if he wouldn't have had like a way to punish Pascal for the block.
Right.
And Pascal may have guessed that as well, but he was already in a bad position, so he had to try something. At least hope that Luis perhaps made a mistake.
That's fair. Sideboarding, by the way, Pascal is +2 Ancient Grudge, -2 Stubborn Denial. That's his plan for this matchup. Luis took out all his chalices and 2 Spell Skites. Has a Warping Whale, a Ratchet Bomb, an extra Ratchet Bomb, 2 Pithing Needles, and 3 Gut Shots.
Well, Luis must have been expecting the Ancient Grudges then.
Taking out all his chalices.
Yeah. Also because Luis was on the draw this game.
Yeah,
so,
I was gonna ask you
so
about
turn
that.
1 Chalice for 0. That's going to be too late. At that point, Pascal has already added all of the Mox Opals and Ornithopters to his board.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Luis likes Chalice on the play. It could easily be a card that just is good on the play but weaker on the draw.
I would expect him to put it back for the next game in case Luis is on the play again.
He has to lose a game before that comes
That's
up.
true.
So cranial plating here from Maynard. He passes the turn back to Scott-Vargas, who sees that the way is clear and crunches in for 7 damage. And he's going to play a Pithing Needle, naming cranial plating. And Luis is firing on all cylinders here.
Indeed.
Maynard finds himself an Ornithopter. But he is going to take another big hit of damage next turn.
Pascal could attack for 1 with the Blinkbot Nexus, or he could keep it back and then block the Matter Reshaper, and then pump itself up to a 2/2. It's not a great trade, because Matter Reshaper gives Luis a free card. You lose a land, but yeah, Pascal is so far behind in the race.
Yeah,
He
might
may
be
just
better
have to
than
go for
taking
it.
7, right?
Yeah.
Well, Pascal did leave back the Blink Moth, so he's kind of priced into following through here, it looks like. He's going to block, pay a mana, activate Blink Moth to pump it, and trade for the Reshaper. Like you said, Frank, he's not happy about that. It was an endless one. And immediately he has a 5/5 replacement. And by the way, 5 is a nice number here for Luis Scott-Vargas, because that's a lethal attacker.
Yeah, Luis had the option of putting a 0/0 endless one on the battlefield, but he wisely chose to just, well, I'll just draw the card.
Yeah, Luis is dialed in today. I'll tell you that. He's seen it all. All right, back over to Luis. Nothing played there from Maynard. And Luis is going to activate Mutavault, and even the mere threat of an attack is enough for lethal. And Luis Scott-Vargas takes down the second game. Now, Randy, we should mention to the viewers here about how the matches are going to be played out today rather than how they were before.
Yeah, this is best 3 out of 5, so we're not done yet. Luis is up 2-0, but he needs to win 1 of the next 3 to actually finish advancing his way into the semifinal. 3 out of 5 with sideboards for 4 of if it went to 5 games. Is that something the Affinity players have to be worried about, Frank? Did that affect your thinking at all coming into this tournament?
Generally speaking, yes, the post-sideboard games are never good for Affinity because there is so many great hate cards in the format, such as Stony Silence or Shadowstorm. Now, the Eldrazi decks in the top 8 don't have a ton of amazing sideboard cards. The blue-red decks do have Hercule's Recall, which could easily swing a game. But the colorless Eldrazi decks from Luis Scott-Vargas don't have many incredible sideboard cards. So the the matchup doesn't change all that much between game ones and post-board games.
Yeah, I talked to Pascal this morning, actually. He was very happy. There are no copies of Stony Silence anywhere in this top 8. And he managed to dodge it all the way through the Swiss as well. Did not play against a Stony Silence all weekend. Probably has a little bit to do with the fact that he's still sitting here playing on Sunday.
All right, so this is going to be the third game here between Shuhei Nakamura and JC Tao. Again, this matchup is supposed to favor JC a bit here. It's hard to say exactly how much, but it's supposed to be in his favor, and they're at 1 game apiece currently as JC won the last game. A slow start here from Shuhei, at least by this Colorless Eldrazi standards here. It's land, land, go.
He's holding 2 gut shots and a dismember. Also Oblivion Sower and the Endless one that he's slow rolling a little bit. Simian Spirit Guide is the final card.
I would guess that Shuhei's plan is to, well, first use a dismember on the first creature that comes out.
Ooh,
or
there's
a
an
gut shot.
Eldrazi Obligator, and he gets to gut shot it here. So a nice sequence there for Shuhei Nakamura as he takes down a real threat there with his sideboard gut shot.
Yeah, and then Shuhei can wait until he can cast Oblivion Sour via Simian Spirit Guide, follow that up with a big Endless one, and then hope to control the boards that way.
All right, and here we go again. Shuhei's doing the discard thing. He's going to end up discarding the other gut shot he had in his hand so that he can fire off Dismember to take down the Reality Smasher. And Shuhei's down to 14,
All right, that's 4 mana for the Oblivion Sour, 5 with the Simian Spirit Guide. We're getting close. Now, Shuhei has the option indeed of making a 4/4 Endless one here, but 4/4 is not a great size in the matchup. There are many bigger creatures. It's much better to make it into, say, a 6/6, such that it can also rumble with a Drowner of Hope.
Another Reality Smasher for JC Tao. The beats keep coming. And he is just forcing Shuhei to have answer after answer, though. Since we've seen that Shuhei hasn't had any threats, you got to figure he's got answers in his hand. And here we go again. Another Dismember. So each of these Reality Smashers is effectively making Shuhei discard 2 cards and take 4 life.
And he gets rid of the Endless one, really favoring the opportunity to make the best out of this Oblivion Sower.
Oblivion Sower, yeah.
5/8 is nice stats in this matchup.
Yeah, plus, with a bunch of lands that you might get, it's not impossible to get into a position where you can start activating Eye of Ugin.
Agreed, yeah.
And just grinding out.
We actually saw that yesterday in when we were watching Scott-Vargas versus Frank Laporte. One of the more exciting matches that we got to watch down the stretch as players were playing for the top 8. And that's what Luis did. He actually had an Oblivion Sower on the battlefield and was able to start activating Eye. As it turned out, he drew a gut shot that just ended the game on the spot, but it looked like he was in commanding position anyway. All right, so a couple of lands there for Shuhei off of the Oblivion Sower.
Scalding Tarn doesn't really do anything unless Shuhei comes up with an Orborg.
Yeah, that's a little awkward for Shuhei. He also doesn't have an Eye of Ugin and didn't hit one there. I think he just drew an Endless one here. Looks like he has enough to make Endless one for 6.
You should be careful, because he's at 10 life already. If he would be able to make, say, a 7/7 Endless one, he can just lose to an Eldrazi Obligator on the spot.
Oh, jeez.
Great point. Now
Well,
it turns out
it is only 6.
It was 6
but
anyway, but I'm sure that was going through Shuhei's head as he was thinking about, well, what can I actually make happen here? So he makes a 6/6, does not open up the door to get Eldrazi Obligatored. And there's Drowner of Hope. You know, Randy, you were saying this is one of the key cards in the matchup, and there it is, the big 5/5. Now, looking over at the battlefield, though, I got to say that Shuhei looks pretty well set up here with a 5/8 and a 6/6 against the Drowner.
And he drew another 6/6.
Yeah, like Shuhei declares attack. He wants to see if JC is going to sack Scions to prevent Shuhei from attacking. I don't think JC should. It seems to me that if Shuhei wants to tap his creatures to attack, that's just great for JC. because now he can use the Scions to force through a crackback. Like JC can use the tap ability on the Drowner to win this race in theory.
All right, so JC's going to prevent 6 of the life by chump blocking with the Scion, but take the other 5, dropping down to 8, but maintaining an Eldrazi Scion and the Drowner of Hope here.
And jumping is the same as stepping. So Shuhei can either make it a 6/6, which would be a good size against the Drowner, or maybe a 4/4 and keep up Blinkmod Nexus mana as a blocker, but I definitely like the 6/6 here.
Shuhei's drawn endless one with the last 2 draw steps, right?
Yeah.
From basically an empty hand.
Yeah, remember, this is the draw where Shuhei had, the controlling style draw where he has already killed 2 Reality Smashers. I mean, JC's had a really nice draw here, but Shuhei has been able to mitigate it and then has drawn very nicely to find back-to-back threats here after the Oblivion Sower. So things coming together pretty nicely for Shuhei. When he kept the hand with a bunch of gut shots and dismembers, I think this is kind of how he would like to see the game play out. He cleans up the board and then starts adding big threats. All right, so JC is going to use up the Drowner of Hope activation and the Scion that goes with it to get in for 5 damage, dropping Shuhei down to 5. And now he really needs to add back to the board, and he does. He's got another Drowner of Hope. Back to you, Shuhei. That's 2 lethal threats for Tau.
Checking out the Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. That can gain some life. Not right now, because JC doesn't have the mana to activate it. Unless he sacrifices Eldrazi Scion tokens, but potentially on the next turn.
Okay, so Shuhei says, I'd like to attack, please, and sends in the team. Couple of chump blocks. And I think he is going to activate that tomb now.
Yeah, he can sack Scions to do it.
He can gain a couple of life here.
Sacrifice for Colorless. Activate.
Gain 3. Go to 11. Take 5. Go down to 6. And JC now has 2 lethal threats on board, ready to rumble into the red zone and finish off Shuhei here in game 3.
Well, Shuhei still has some man lands that can potentially block.
He also drew an Eldrazi Mimic as his draw step. Wow. You see the card in JC Tao's hand?
No, what was it?
Gut shot.
Oh, gut shot. Okay. So Ghost Quarter is going to take out the tomb. And Tao says, I'm going to search. I've actually got targets in here.
Yeah.
Still my other island.
His other island, he said. I like that.
If Shuhei was going to use the Ghost Quarter, it may have been better to just use that before attacking, because then JC would have had to sacrifice the Eldrazi Scions to activate it before they could have blocked any of Shuhei's creatures.
He got a lot of information from seeing how JC handled that attack, though.
No, that's true.
So right now, the only thing standing between JC and victory are a couple of creature lands and an Eldrazi Mimic that are going to be chump blocking.
If they don't die to gut shot.
Yeah, he's got a Mutavault down there.
Yeah, I guess the fact that there's...
But the Mimic certainly can die.
Gut shot wins this, right?
Yeah, Gutshot can deal with the Eldrazi Mimic.
Right, and then
Shuhei can only present one of the lands because
because Scalding Tarn doesn't make any mana.
Because it doesn't make mana. If he was able to tap that, he would be fine.
Gut shot clears the Mimic. Now there's only Mutavault to block with. He's 1 mana short of firing up the Nexus, which would have been the chump blocker he needed.
It looks like Shuhei is blocking, but that's 5.
Yeah, he's at 5, right?
Yeah, that's going to do it.
Gut shot for the win.
Gut shot once again for the win. And JC Tao wins game 2, so he puts himself up. game 3, he puts himself up 2 games to 1 against the Hall of Famer Shuhei Nakamura. It looks like we're going to hop back over and see game 3 of Luis Scott-Vargas versus Pascal Maynard. Once again, Luis, as we come into the match here, is up 2 games to 0 over the Affinity player Pascal Maynard from the Team East-West Bowl. Again, this is Pascal's first Pro Tour top 8. He's got 9 GP top 8s, though, so he's played a lot of Magic and experienced a lot of success at it as well. But this is the first time he's got there at the Pro Tour level. And for Luis, this is number 6.
Yeah. You know how many players have 6+ Pro Tour top 8s?
How many?
10.
There's 10?
There are 10, exactly.
We added 2 to the list this weekend.
Yeah, it went from 8 to 10 this weekend with Shuhei and Luis joining it. It's a pretty nice club.
So this looks to be a fine hand for Pascal. He had something to do early. He has a big payoff card in Steel Overseer. And I think I saw an Arcbound Ravager lurking in his hand as well. So this is a pretty good draw. It's explosive with the Springleaf Drum. You have the payoff. And even the potential of presenting a very fast poison kill via Inkbond Nexus.
Okay, well, Luis does have a Ratchet Bomb here.
And that gut shot on Overseer was pretty nice.
So
That's probably the best target for a gut shot, right?
That's why the card is in the sideboard even mostly. Yeah. So Pascal could present a 5/5 Inkbond Nexus here by casting Arcbound Ravager, activating the Nexus, sacrificing a bunch of artifacts to the Arcbound Ravager, and then just go for the 2-turn poison kill. That would not work out well against the Ghost Quarter that Luis has on the battlefield, though.
Does it make sense, though? Oh, the Ghost Quarter's on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Right? I was thinking it was in his hand because he's also got one in his hand.
All right, well, there's Arcbound Ravager now.
So Pascal just has to spread it out a bit. Pascal's game plan probably is based on winning via poison damage, but yeah, he shouldn't go all in here.
Looks like the Ratchet Bomb's going to get cracked right away here, which is going to take down a Moxoplan and an Ornithopter here.
Yeah, that was as a response to the Ravager, so that those cards couldn't be eaten.
So Pascal's going to activate his Inkmoth Nexus and attack with it and the Signal Pest. That's 2 poison counters on Luis Scott-Vargas here. And like you said, Frank, that is going to be Pascal's game plan, at least in the early stages of the third game here.
If Luis steps out here for, I don't know, some creature, and Pascal draws, say, a Darksteel Citadel or a 0-mana artifact, Pascal may be able to present 8 poison.
Pithy Needle.
Pithy Needle.
And then you name the card on resolution, so Pascal has to decide if he's going to activate Ravager, because Luis could name Ravager. How does Pascal want to play this?
Yeah, right now we have Pithy Needle on the stack. Nothing's been named. Like Randy said, the name doesn't come until the card actually resolves and is entering the battlefield. So right now, it's on Pascal Maynard to figure out what it is exactly that Luis wants to do with it and how he can mitigate it the best.
If Pascal decides to sacrifice a bunch of artifacts to the Arcbound Ravager in response, then Luis could just choose to say, okay, well, I'll name Inkmoth Nexus.
Exactly. Doesn't stop the mana ability of Inkmoth Nexus, but that's not the one he's worried about. He's worried about the activated ability that turns it into a creature. Well, how do you think Luis wants this to go? I mean, does he want to name Ravager here? Should he be naming Ravager? Should he be naming Nexus?
I think with Luis still at 18 life and the Ravager never really becoming overly big, I think Luis may be more interested in naming Inkbond Nexus if Pascal wouldn't do anything in response.
He decided to name Ravager here.
Yeah, I think it's because of the 2 Ghost Quarters.
He knows that he can fight through those Inkmoth. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so back over to you, Pascal Maynard. Pascal's going to play a Cranial Plating here.
Yeah, that's the card Luis would name if he knew it was coming.
Yeah, that was really nice for Pascal because now he's going to be able to get in for a big hit of damage here.
It's a great draw.
Is it 6 damage he's hitting for, dropping Luis down to 12? Yes. Third Ghost Quarter of the game here for Scott-Vargas.
No 2-mana lands for Luis. It's finally up to Thought Not Seer land. Guess he's holding a Simian Spirit Guide as well, so if he wanted to, he could have played Reality Smasher.
I like the Mimic here because it also opens up the possibility of blocking down the Signal Pest with a Blinkmont Nexus. If Luis
Nice.
would just make a Thought Knot Seer, well, he wouldn't exile anything because Pascal had no cards in hand. And then he stepped out without a blocker for the Signal Pest. So in that case, Pascal would just equip the plating there and attack for a bunch. By playing the Eldrazi Mimic, he does have a blocker for the Arcbound Ravager, which still cannot be activated due to the Biting Needle.
Yeah, 2 toughness will trade for the 2/1 Mimic. Good
Yeah.
point. And he can trade Nexus for Signal Pest.
Mhm.
Yeah, this line's great.
Looks like Pascal may beg to differ.
I mean, it also sets Luis up to potentially race with Reality Smasher coming down, powering up the Mimic.
If I were Pascal, I would be thinking to just attack with the Ravager here and trade it for the Mimic. Sure, the Biting Needle shuts down the activated ability of the Ravager, but the modular ability would still happen. You can still put the 2 counters onto the Signal Pest afterwards, which then afterwards will be happy to attack into a Blinkmont Nexus.
Another Ink Moth was the draw step there for Pascal. He plays his land pre-combat.
On the other hand, Pascal also doesn't know what Luis has in hand. And Pascal may be thinking, well, actually, I might want to trade off my Signal Pass for the Blinkmont Nexus, because Luis doesn't have a ton of 2-mana lands, so taking out that land on the other side of the board might prevent Luis from casting some big Eldrazi's over the course of the next few turns.
All right, he looks like he's decided to attack with Ink Moth and Ravager, leave back the Signal Pest here.
Yeah, this is also great. He has 2 black mana up, so he can instant speed equip the plating to Inkmont Nexus. Yeah,
Kind
this
of
line
force
seems
issue.
great. Luis is probably interested in blocking the Mimic on the Arcbound Ravager. I mean, that's why he
Yeah.
played it in the first place.
Yeah, that seems pretty straightforward.
Then Luis will also have to expect the instant speed equip of the plating to the Inkmont Nexus. So Luis has to choose, do I want to trade my Blinkmont Nexus or my Ghost Quarter for that attacking Inkmont Nexus?
It's just too much poison to take, right? Was it 1, 2, 3, 4? It's like 6 poison. Would put him in 8 poison if he takes a hit.
Yeah, facing 2 Nexi, that doesn't seem great.
So then, if you're not willing to take that hit, you have to decide which land you want to trade for it.
Mhm.
The Ghost Quarter or the Nexus.
And I think the Nexus is more valuable because it can still block, or at least jump block Signal Pest at some point
Makes
down the
sense.
road.
And he's going to force Pascal to spend the 2 mana before he uses his Ghost Quarter.
Right, that's exactly what's going to happen here. Pascal does spend the 2 mana. Luis does use his Ghost Quarter. Does Pascal have a mountain in there somewhere?
Yeah, he's got both a mountain and an island.
And an island as well.
2 basics.
He was prepared for Ghost Quarter. Many Affinity lists only play 1, but
Right.
he went down. He went up to 2 basic lands. It's fine in this matchup.
Okay, they're going to go to damage. And as you described earlier, Frank, the modular ability is going to put the 2+1/+1 counters from the Arcbound Ravager onto the Signal Pest here. Pascal's also going to equip cranial plating before passing the turn back to Luis. So Luis has been able to mitigate this board in a reasonable way, but has yet to find any pressure on his side. And now he's facing down a Signal Pest. It's pretty big.
Yeah, Luis's deck is not set up to deal with a 3 toughness evasive creature. He can try to raise it, but Luis doesn't have a good board presence, and Pascal is still at 20 life.
Dismember's really the
Yeah,
only
he can find
answer.
Dismember or possibly Wretched Bomb, which is a little slow. But his gut shots or blocking with Blinkmont Nexus are not going to get him out of this.
Wow. Simian Spirit Guide for Thought-Knots here. He's holding Reality Smasher as well, but he's nowhere close to that now. He needs to draw 2 mana land to get there, I guess.
I mean, he has 8 in the deck.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, it does look like Luis also drew a Pithing Needle, a second Pithing Needle. Which, if he ever manages to get the plating off of that Signal Pest, would prevent it from reattaching to something else.
In hindsight, this game would have gone much better for Luis if he had named Cranial Plating with his first Pithing Needle.
Just name it blind, even though you haven't seen one?
Yeah, but I don't think that was the
No.
correct line.
Wow.
Jeez. Another cranial plating.
They're just 4s, but
Is
still.
it 10 damage?
Yep.
Luis falls down to 2, and
Can't even
that
cast
means
Dismember.
that Dismember is not an out for him, and it looks like Maynard is going to take game 3 here if Luis can't find something, and quickly. He does have a chump block available here.
Maynard might even be able to present 2 lethal threats. The Signal Pest, just the 2 power with Luis at 2 life, but also potentially an Inkmoth Nexus, where he might equip a Cranial Plating, perhaps 2 if Pascal draws another land or a Mox Opal.
I think he has to draw a land to make that lethal.
Okay, so
and
Luis is
sees
going to
it.
take that particular line away by naming Inkmoth Nexus here with the Pithing Needle, which means that he will get a draw step, barring anything crazy from Pascal here. Welding Jar was a draw. Luis is going to activate his Blinkmoth and Chump Block, and he needs to find something right now, or this one's going to be over.
He drew an eye, but it's too late.
It's too late. So Pascal Maynard takes game number 3 here and makes it 2-1. Still in Luis's favor in this match, but Pascal's not done yet. He's fighting back, and that means we get to jump back over to Shuhei Nakamura versus JC Tao, which is also 2-1. This one is in JC's favor.
And that feels like a game where if Luis had ever come up with a 2-mana land, he was holding multiple Reality Smashers by the end of the game. If he'd been able to cast a Reality Smasher, he could have just won that as a race, I think.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, the deck is really reliant on having one of those Ancient Tomb style
Yep.
2-mana lands.
All right, we are underway here in game number 4. Got Shuhei on the left side of your screen, JC Tao on the right.
Oh, jeez.
And here we go. Welcome to
I-
Eldrazi land here. A pair of Eldrazi mimics off of a turn 1 Eye of Ugin for Tao, and he just passes his turn back.
Yeah, there has been some talk of the potential of a turn 2 kill with 3 Eldrazi mimics on turn 1 and then a Reality Smasher on turn 2. Well,
Have
it's
you
not
seen
gonna
one of those?
It's not going to be turn 2, but
Still
might
a good
get
start.
close.
Still a good start for Tao, who attacks for 4 damage with the mimics, but doesn't have a follow-up play here. He's just going to pass the turn back to Shuhei. Shuhei did make a Ratchet Bomb to eventually deal with those mimics, but it's slow. And it's an Eye of Ugin, but no play here from Shuhei. And there it is, Reality Smasher.
Yeah, I think Shuhei may have some responses.
Yep, he does indeed. He's going to just take down the Reality Smasher right away here.
Oh, so he lets the Mimics go to 5/5? Or how does that work?
He has to, right? I mean,
Yeah.
He has to be on the battlefield.
I mean, he could have gut shot it to kill a Mimic as a response, but He's planning to use Ratchet Bomb to kill both the Mimics, so he just takes 10.
Doesn't this work via last known information?
That could be the case, Frank.
Oh, with the Mimic triggers on the stack.
If that is the case, then the last known is that it was 0-0. So he
That's
actually only takes 4 there.
Thank you.
And drops down to 8. And that also lets Shuhei put an extra counter there on the Ratchet Bomb. And wow, look at this.
So he's got Ratchet
Sower.
Bomb to kill both the Mimics and now an Oblivion Sower.
And he even finds 2 lands off of it as well. So all of a sudden, Shuhei Nakamura has really turned the corner back.
But you know what's still in Tao's hand? Eldrazi Obligator. If he finds the mana to play it and activate the trigger, he can steal the Oblivion Sour and crash in for 8.
He just drew Cavern of Souls.
Well, that might be enough. That can produce the red.
That's red. You've got the colorless, right?
And even with the Mimics dying, he still has 8.
Now Shuhei has some untapped mana. Shuhei hypothetically could respond with another removal spell, but he'd still go for it.
A gut shot would get it done here too, leaving Shuhei at 1. And there it is, Obligator. Shuhei looks like he wants to crack Ratchet Bomb here.
That's just a distraction, though.
Shuhei may have just realized what's happening here. And that's it. JC Tao advances to the semifinals 3-1 over Shuhei Nakamura. And we have our first semifinalist here, gentlemen. JC Tao from Team East West Bowl beats the Hall of Famer, Shuhei Nakamura, 3-1. And he's going to claim his seat in the semis. So this is JC's 3rd Pro Tour.
3rd Pro Tour, yeah.
Yeah, he has played 2 others. He got here via Regional Pro Tour qualifier and just beat Shuhei in the quarter. So
that Eldrazi Obligator was every bit as good as we thought it would be. That card just very good at breaking this.
So swingy, too.
Winning the mirror.
Okay, let's jump back over to game 4 here as Pascal Maynard and Luis Scott-Vargas just start off their match here. Again, when we come in, Luis had won the first 2 games in an impressive fashion, too. The first one, apparently, he just kind of bum rushed him. And then in the next one, he kind of picked apart the offense from Pascal Maynard. But on that last game, Pascal had a nice little game where Luis never found an offensive threat to be spoken of at all.
He never found a 2-mana land. It's the real problem.
Yeah.
It let the Affinity deck just be the aggressor the whole time. Luis was forced to play defense and kind of had these big Eldrazi clunking up his hand.
Looks like Luis is going to take a mulligan here.
Still gotta be rooting for the robots here. I mean, robots are nice. They help out in the house, vacuum clean the floor. They help out in our factories, building our cars. I mean, these Eldrazi's, they're just like giant space alien monsters.
So you think the robots should all take an oath to defend us from the Eldrazi menace?
Yes. I mean, humans need not apply to this top 8, but the robots are gonna save us.
Can robots take an oath?
Yeah, probably.
Not a lot of meaning behind it, but you can probably take one.
Didn't know we were going to live in a world where robots were the good guys in the top 8. Luis down to 5 cards.
Yep, Luis is on 5 now. It does look like he's found a hand he can keep here, though. He's got 3 lands, a Matter Reshaper, and an Endless one. Look, it's not explosive, but he can cast these spells. Oh, he's going to send it back. It looks like Luis is looking for more specific things. It's tough because it's tempting to keep hands like that, right? Where at least you get to play Magic of some sort. But when you think about the matchup, that doesn't look like the type of hand that can win. I don't know if it's better than a 4, though.
How's Pascal's hand?
Pascal's hand is looking good. He has everything I would look for in a hand. An explosive start with, well, here 2 creatures on turn 1. He has a payoff card in Cranial Plating. He has enough mana to cast it all, so the perfect combination of tools that you need for Affinity. And Luis is mulliganing quite aggressively, But I think it is correct because, well, if you mulligan and find an Eldrazi Temple, that already kind of makes up for a mulligan. And in this matchup, you really need some pieces of interaction. Just a couple of ground guys are not going to win against an Affinity deck that can easily win on turn 4 with evasive damage.
Well, Luis found an Eye of Ugin, but that is his only land. Oh, top decked one.
Found a Ghost Quarter, passes the turn back.
I didn't notice if he scryed that to the top or scryed a non-land to the bottom, but scry obviously makes the pain of mulliganing slightly less.
Vault Scourge here for Pascal Maynard as he builds out his board against Luis, again, who is on a mulligan to 4 here. And there's a Dismember that's going to take down one of the Signal Pests. Another land off the top, and it's a nice one here, Urborg. This does give him access to Reality Smasher, which is exactly what he's got. Maynard just making sure that, really, you can cast that right now? And yes, yes, he can. And there it is, Reality Smasher crunches in.
Pascal had actually a non-trivial decision on a previous turn on whether or not to play Cranial Plating in order to protect it from, say, a Thought-Knot Seer, or to just add to the board with additional creatures, which would be much better against, say, a Pithing Needle, because it doesn't give information on the type of big card that you have in hand. It certainly works out for Pascal this way, because he also has enough mana this turn to play and equip Cranial Plating to a creature. Pascal will likely be tempted to equip Cranial Plating to Vault Scourge, because that gives you the lifelink bonus. But he also knows that Luis's deck contains Gutshot. So if he expects Luis to be holding Gutshot, he may want to put the plating on a less threatening creature like the Memnite instead. But I would expect that if Luis had Gutshot, he might have used it already a turn ago.
Yeah, it looks like his card in hand is just a Dismember here, Frank. So it's Master of Ethereum and a big attack here for Maynard. This is going to make life very difficult for Scott-Vargas as he's trying to race here with this Reality Smasher, but he just took a ton of damage that turn. He's down to 7 already.
This presents an even faster clock than a Cranial Plating.
Scott-Vargas would love to take down that Master of Ethereum with his Dismember, but fortunately that still leaves Pascal with a formidable board state. And it would could put Luis down to low life, though can actually pay back black mana now.
Yeah, if you're Luis here, you probably just have to hope that Pascal has nothing in hand, just a couple of lands, because you can't really beat much else. You'll likely have to deal with the Master of Ethereum, because it just boosts both the Vault Scourge and the Signal Pest, to which you have no answer. And then you might be able to Ghost Quarter the Blinkmod Nexus. You could keep back Reality Smasher to block Memnite, or just keep on attacking in order to raise and then hope to draw something.
Okay, so he's going to pay full price for Dismember here, and he's going to take down that Master of Ethereum and just pass the turn back with Reality Smasher as a blocker.
On defense to block Memnite.
Yeah, but Pascal should have lethal here with plating going on to an evasive threat, and that'll do it.
Like you said, Luis was kind of forced to be in a position there where he needed to hope that Pascal had nothing. That was not the case. Pascal Maynard evens things up now at 2 games apiece, and we're going to get, well, our first game 5 of the day.
Switched back to 3 out of 5, straight to game 5. Luis did change his sideboarding on the play, by the way. We get the word back from our spotter on the floor. He does have the Chalices back in his deck when he's playing first and took out Simian Spirit Guides for them. So Spirit Guides in the board, Chalices in the main on the play is Luis's plan.
That makes sense. I was on the receiving end of a Chalice for 0 on turn 1 at the Pro Tour. It wasn't pretty.
It sounds kind of insane in this matchup, but maybe part of the reason Luis was mulliganing so aggressively in that game 4. Just knows he's got this Chalice for 0 bomb available to him.
It's also a bit of a gamble against some Affinity hands. It doesn't do anything, of course. But yeah, sometimes you keep an Affinity hand with, say, a Memnite, an Ornithopter, and a Mox Opal, and it would be super explosive, incredibly good, and then suddenly, oh, well, I guess all of these cards will be countered.
The Simian Spirit Guide is interesting, too. I mean, I think a lot of the reason that's in the deck is so that you can play Chalice on 1 as soon as possible. But in this matchup on the play, you don't want to play Chalice 1. You want to play Chalice 0.
Why don't we take a look at the bigger picture on LSV's sideboard here. Randy, you were mentioning what his plan ended up being here, but we can take a look at what this board looks like. I know a lot of you at home are interested in this list that the Channel Fireball and face-to-face teams have come up with. And then this is it. Here's the sideboard now.
Yeah, so for this matchup, Warping Whale comes in, 3 Gut Shots come in, Ratchet Bomb comes in. He's been doing that consistently. Oh, Pithing Needle he changed up as well. I didn't even notice that. On the draw, he was bringing in Pithing Needle, but here on the play, he did not apparently bring in the Pithing Needles. On the draw, he took out 4 Chalices, 2 Spells Guides, and a Matter Reshaper. On the play, he took out 4 Spirit Guides, a Matter Reshaper, and a Spells Guide, and 1 Spells Guide.
Let's take a look at Pascal's sideboard here as well. Frank, maybe you have some thoughts on what Pascal's brought to the table here.
Yeah, he's definitely boarding in the Ancient Grudges. I actually played against Matt Nest, who also played the Colorless Eldrazi deck during the Pro Tour, where I didn't board in the Ancient Grudges because I just didn't know how many artifacts would be in his deck. But looking at the deck list, and Pascal does have access to the deck list in the top 8, it is going to be good enough to take out Chalice of the Void, even Blinkmont Nexus, and so on. Pascal also has a couple of weak cards in the deck, such as Stubborn Denial, that he would be happy to replace, so that works out.
Yeah, that 2-for-2 swap is what he did for games 2 and 3.
No, the Gut Shot could also be okay to like take out an Eldrazi Mimic or a Blinkmont Nexus. It's not great, but
he has in fact brought that in now, and he's brought in 2 Thoughtseizes as well, taking out the Welding Jars.
Yeah, the Welding Jars don't really do that much. They don't protect you from much against the Eldrazi deck. Whereas Thoughtseize, if you can take out, say, a Thought-Knot Seer or a Reality Smasher, sometime early you can stave off the attacks.
So Luis has kept 7. Pascal is mulliganing. Going down to 6 right now. Luis is 7, by the way. Pretty good. Does have a certain XX casting cost card in it. Along with a Pithing Needle.
And the Dismember, so a lot of interaction. That's definitely what you need against the Affinity deck.
And his mana includes a 2-mana land. There's an Eldrazi
Perfect.
Temple. Yeah, hand looks great. I mean, he only has 3 mana. Like, he's going to have to draw mana before he can get to Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher. But so much disruption coming out of the gate.
And then to back it up, he has a Thought-Knot Seer and a Reality Smasher to just put on a lot of pressure. So it looks like a perfect mix of cards for Luis.
Really does.
All right, so Luis Scott-Vargas is ready to rumble here.
Pascal's going to keep 6.
And Pascal, I believe, is keeping 6. Yes,
yeah,
he is in fact
scry.
resolving a scry right now.
So how many zeros are in there?
I see definitely a Memnite in there. Also some lands and a Cranial Plating, so definitely a keep for Pascal. He cannot be unhappy with that on 6 cards.
All right, he's put the card back on top as well. So let's get in to Game 5 of our quarterfinal match here. Luis Scott-Vargas versus Pascal Maynard. Who is going to advance to the semis, and who's going to have to go home saying, hey, at least I got that top 8. Chalice of the Void for 0 kicks things off for Luis Scott-Vargas. Darksteel Citadel for Pascal Maynard. And Luis is going to waste no time getting on the board here. He's going to play an endless one for 3 here on the second turn of the game before passing the turn back to Maynard.
The card that Pascal scried to the top after his mulligan was an Ancient Grudge.
And you can see why. Ancient Grudge right now going to take out the Chalice and open up a Memnite, though that was it currently. So pass the turn back to Luis, who is going to start crunching in with this endless one. And if he's found a land here, he can start getting some real business going, but he hasn't yet.
Has not found a land.
This could be the story of this game from Luis's standpoint. If he can find a land here, he's going to start casting Thought-Knot Seers and pretty soon Reality Smashers. But if he can't, he's going to give Pascal the window to get back in this game. Right now, Pascal's only sitting on 2 lands and a Memnite.
Pascal also drew a Thoughtseize, so he has a choice to make this turn. He could either just play land, cast Master of Ethereum, and try to present a fast clock, or he could play Thoughtseize first, potentially take out the Dismember that Luis actually has in hand to answer the Master of Ethereum, and then, well, I don't know, a Cranial Plating afterwards. If Pascal goes for the Thoughtseize play this turn, I think that will work out better for him, given that Luis has a Dismember to deal with the Master of Ethereum. But yeah, on the other hand, you also want to be able to present a fast clock here, because if you just don't add a creature to the board here, and Luis untaps and plays, say, a Thought-Knot Seer, you get pretty far behind in a race. So a tough spot for Pascal here.
Looks like he's decided on the Thoughtseize here, Frank, and he's going to get a chance to look at this nice hand that Luis Scott-Vargas has. A bunch of cards kind of stuck there. He's got that Pithing Needle, the Dismember, and then the 2 creatures we mentioned earlier.
Pascal certainly does not care about the Pithing Needle, because he still has Ancient Grudge in the graveyard to deal with it. But I would expect him to take the Dismember here, and then cross his fingers and hope that Luis doesn't draw another land for the next 2 turns or so.
And the point being here to try to set up that Master of Ethereum to protect it.
Yes, because currently the Master won't be big enough to survive a Dismember, but in 1 or 2 turns or so, it can easily tower over the board, basically block all of Luis's creatures, while pumping the rest. I think it will be a key card to have access to in this game. On the other hand, if he just leaves the Thought-Knot Seer in Luis's hand, and Luis draws a land, yeah, then you also lose the Master that way.
Yes, this is a tough spot for Maynard. He's thinking through his options. This is a Thoughtseize that's being resolved right now. It's also cost Maynard another 2 life. And remember, that 3/3 is going to keep rumbling here as well.
Pascal may also be thinking, okay, if I take the Thought-Knot Seer, alright, then Luis keeps hitting for 5, that's okay. Then on the next turn, maybe I could start racing. He doesn't in the end take the Dismember.
Yeah, he took the Dismember and then played a Cranial Plating, and he just has to pass the turn back here. This is a big draw step for Luis. He finds a land, and that gives him the Thought-Knot Seer. He's going to take away the Master of Ethereum. He's also going to turn his Eldrazi Mimic into a 4/4 and attack with both creatures for 7 damage here. That was huge for Luis Scott-Vargas.
Absolutely a game-changing draw. Pascal's really hoping there would not be a land on top there, but this is just perfect for Luis. Add a creature to the board, increase the power of the Eldrazi Mimic, and take out the Master of Ethereum.
Oh, what a brutal swing.
Yep.
Now Luis is another land away from playing Reality Smasher here next turn.
If it weren't for that Blinkmont Nexus, Pascal might be able to go for a 2-turn poison kill by animating the Inkmont Nexus, equipping the plating, crashing in for 5 poison, and then doing the same on the next turn. But yeah, Luis would have a Blinkmont Nexus to block with. Although Pascal does have an Ancient Grudge, which can kill it. But he also knows that Luis has the Pithing Needle, which can easily go onto, well, either Nexus or Plating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Pascal cannot deal with both the Pithing Needle and the blocking Inkmoth Nexus.
Wow, this has been a really tight game. Pascal had to mulligan this game, but he did keep a 6-card hand and scry to the top. Luis had a great opener that needed another land to get over the hump, and right in time found it.
So given that Pascal probably cannot set up a 2-turn poison kill, maybe he has to play defensively, equip the plating to his Mem Knight, try to block the Thought-Knot Seer, stave off the bleeding a bit, and potentially draw a card when the Thought-Knot Seer dies.
All right, he's going to play a Vault Scourge and equip the plating to that defensively here and try to set up a scenario where he can stem the bleeding. Luis draws his card for the turn, has not played a land yet. He's going over his options. Looks like it was a Matter Reshaper off the top for Scott-Vargas.
So no Reality Smasher this turn.
That's right.
But he can play the Matter Reshaper and the Pithing Needle. Just has to decide how he wants to attack. And the Pithing Needle obviously gets better if Cranial Plating is unattached for some reason. May actually want to get in combat with a Vault Scourge here.
I don't think Luis wants to be attacking with Thought-Knot Seer here. Luis is in a good position in the game, but if he gives Pascal free cards, he might suddenly get into a losing position. So what if Luis just casts the Matter Reshaper, turning the Mimic into a 3/2, and then just attack with the Endless One and the Eldrazi Mimic?
Sure.
In that case, Pascal probably wouldn't even block, just take the damage, and then start attacking back with the Vault Scourge, which is also not great.
Luis decides to attack with all 3 creatures, including the Thought-Knot Seer, so everybody into the red zone.
I mean, Pascal is at 8.
This is a lethal attack. Yeah, Pascal is. He must block something
That's
here.
the obvious block, though. I think Pascal is happy to trade for Thought-Knot Seer and get the card, like Frank was saying.
He's also going to gain some life here in the exchange, thanks to that Vault Scourge.
Yeah, Luis won't be happy to give Pascal a free card here, but, well, at least he keeps other creatures around. And this forced the block by the Vault Scourge, which, if it would have stayed on the battlefield, could somehow provide enough lifelink for Pascal to win the race.
Yeah, so that doesn't happen here as the Vault Scourge hits the graveyard, though that did gain Pascal a good amount of life. You also saw good sequencing there from Pascal. He activated his Inkmoth there just to get 1 extra life. But immediately follow-up play there from Luis Scott-Vargas is going to be Pithing Needle, naming Cranial Plating, which is going to force Pascal to use that Ancient Grudge out of his graveyard to take down the Needle and give himself access. And he has another Vault Scourge here. He's going to equip that up as well. Is this Pascal Maynard scrapping back into this game here? Luis has a pair of Reality Smashers in hand, and he's a mana short off of casting them right now. You got to figure if he can find a land next turn that he can just start winning this race pretty easily with the big 5/5 tramplers with haste.
Yes.
But he couldn't get it this turn. He's got 2 of them in hand, though.
Yeah, so now he's got to figure out, okay, how much do I want to attack with? He's not going to attack with the Mimic because he doesn't want to trade it for Mem Knight. He offers up a pair of 3-power creatures that Pascal can trade his Vault Scourge for.
Yeah, Luis did not want to attack with his Mutavault there.
That was the one I was wondering about.
Yeah, given the pair of Reality Smashers in hand, if he had
Can't
attacked
afford
with,
to lose the land.
Yeah, if he would have attacked with the Mutavault, it's quite likely that Pascal would just trade his Vault Scourge for that, and then Luis may be in a poor position if he ends up drawing some other big expensive cards. So this is a kind of a safe play. Seems fine.
See if Pascal wants to block Endless One or not. This is 6 damage. could put Pascal down to 2, notably out of gut shot range. And set up Pascal to make a big attack next turn and gain a bunch of life. If he loses his Vault Scourge here, it does take away his ability to gain life going forward.
I don't think he can go to 2, though. I think Pascal has to make this block, make this trade.
He does indeed. So Pascal's going to trade off the Vault Scourge there for the Endless one, which actually gains him 2 life in the exchange, even though he took 3 from the Matter Reshaper. And let's see what Pascal has for this turn. This is a big turn for him. Every turn counts down the stretch here as Luis is just looking to find a land and start playing Reality Smashers back to back here. So far, Pascal has been able to generate no forward momentum as far as offense goes. He has not attacked yet. But he has mitigated some of what Luis is doing with that Ancient Crudge.
If Pascal can correctly identify the contents of Luis's hand, and he might be able to, given that, well, if Luis would not have double Reality Smasher in hand, he probably would play something, then it definitely makes sense to present a big poison attack here. Essentially forcing Luis's hand. It wouldn't be lethal yet, but Luis may still have to trade with his Blinkmont Nexus, thereby shunting his mana base and moving him further away from casting Reality Smashers. Then after combat you can just equip the plating to Memnite to be able to block whatever creatures Luis might be attacking with.
Right, it was a Springleaf Drum, and yeah, Luis has none of it. He does not want to sit there and take 6 poison, so he is going to go ahead and trade off, and now he's more lands away from those Reality Smashers, and he actually found one. I think that was a Mutavault off the top for Luis, so nice play there for Pascal to figure out what Luis was doing and that he had cards stuck in his hand that he can't cast. There's not that many that Luis can't cast with the 4 mana that he had, and he set Luis Scott-Vargas back. Though as it sits, Luis is ahead in the damage race and can just start crunching in and even just trading cards off from Memnites here.
Yeah, by fending off that poison threat, Luis bought himself several turns.
Yeah.
Didn't get to play Reality Smasher this turn, but yeah, Pascal's out of creatures now.
And there we go. There's that Mutavault. So again, Luis is in a scenario where he wants to find a land on top of his library, and if he does, Reality Smashers are going to end this game very quickly. In fact, if Pascal hasn't found a creature here, it could end the game next turn, and he didn't. He found a Glimmer Void.
I mean, the thing is, even if Luis doesn't find creatures,
yeah,
he can win this race
easily.
Is
this a land for
Luis?
Luis
Wait, is Pascal
Scott-Vargas?
at 7?
Yes. He just took 3 last turn. Now he's at 4. Luis does not activate Mutavault because he wants to cast a second Matter Reshaper, and this could be it. What does Pascal find off the top of his library here? That's lethal on board for Luis Scott-Vargas. He's going to be able to present 3 creatures. It looks like it was a Steel Overseer, but that's not enough. Wow. Luis finds Eye of Ugin, plays Smasher, attacks with all 3, and puts himself into the semifinals. Pascal Maynard, great match there. Took Luis all the way to Game 5, but Luis Scott-Vargas is our second semifinalist of the day. We have JC Tao and LSV moving on to the semis here. Ooh, that's just a taste of what we're going to be bringing you guys today, by the way. This is going to be a very intense day. This whole entire Pro Tour has had a real kind of dramatic air to it. For those of you that were with us on Friday and Saturday, you'll know what I was talking about. There was just a lot of sweet top decks and, near heartbreak and that kind of stuff. So really great stuff here from Atlanta. And again, we've got Luis Scott-Vargas and JC Tao moving in. Now, to kind of map out the rest of the day, we've got 2 more quarterfinals to cover. That's Andrew Brown and Patrick Dickmann, and Yvonne Flock and Frank Lepore that we're going to be bringing you next. And then, of course, we'll continue with the semis and the finals. All right, so that's going to do it for our first little segment today. Let's head back to Richard Hagan at the news desk.
Thanks very much to Marshall, Frank and Randy there. I've been joined at the news desk by Brian David, Marshall Pro Tour historian, and Matej Big Z Zadeltai, gold level pro, in the trenches this weekend at the Pro Tour. So there we are, gentlemen. First two of our 4 quarterfinals in the books. And if we take a look at our bracket, for those of you just joining us, welcome along. 10:30 in the morning here in Atlanta, Georgia. We began with Shuhei Nakamura of Japan, the top seed. He finished on 40 points in the Swiss yesterday, playing Colorless Eldrazi against United States Jiachen Tao, playing blue-red Eldrazi. Matej, what happened in that one?
JC Tao took the match 3-1 using very convincing colored Eldrazi to his advantage. Drowner of Hope being the prime one that really took the games home for JC, and he did really well. Shuhei did get a little unlucky with a couple of the draws, but overall JC's deck we felt was favored, and he proved that.
Yeah, Eldrazi Obligator sealed the match for JC Tao there. He was able to steal a giant creature and smash in for a huge win.
Yeah, and interesting to see, we saw in the deciding game 2 Eldrazi Mimics just straight out of the gates. That's the kind of start we expect from an Affinity deck, but here we were. It's Affinity for colorless, isn't it, these decks?
That sound backstage is Shuhei kicking bottles away.
I don't think it is. And BDM, let's talk for a moment about Shuhei Nakamura, because he was here in his 6th Pro Tour top 8, and the fact that in the end the quarterfinal itself wasn't that competitive shouldn't shy away from what a phenomenal achievement that is.
So we talked about the sigh that Luis Scott-Vargas had when he made the top 8. It was drowned out by the sigh from Shuhei Nakamura. It's been 8 years since he made a Pro Tour top 8. He's had a lot of top 6. He's had multiple top 16s. I think 2 top 16s, maybe 3 top 25s, somewhere in that neighborhood, finishes along the way. But as he pointed out himself, he's like, I was getting really worried there because I had a multiple year stretch where I barely got beyond the 3 pro point gift bag, that they hand you for showing up at the Pro Tour. He's
right.
like, I didn't do well on the Pro Tour for a couple of years.
He's a silver pro right now, notionally. But of course, he's in the Hall of Fame, which means he can come to every Pro Tour he wants ever, which is great. And it's not that big a surprise. We were in Vancouver last week, and he played for the top 8 there. He was really in good form for sure. If he had won that last round, he would have tied Olivier Ruel for the all-time record.
28 Grand Prix top 8s, and would have been in a position to break a deadlock with Yuya Watanabe and Kai Bude for 7. All 3 of them have 7 Grand Prix wins.
Grand Prix titles, right.
And he would have been able to break next time he wins a GP, and we know he'll win another GP. It's just a matter of time for him. He'll set the record.
All right, so great stuff. But Shuhei Nakamura is done, the 6-time Pro Tour top 8 man, and in his first Pro Tour top 8, Jiachen Tao of the United States advances with blue-red Eldrazi. So who would he face in the semi-finals? Well, the answer to that, they played quarterfinal 2 simultaneously. We had Luis Scott-Vargas, the number 4 seed with colorless Eldrazi, up against Pascal Maynard of Canada with Affinity. And Shuhei's deck, card for card, the same as Luis's. They're on the same team, tested together, 75 cards matched up. So, BDM, what happened in colorless Eldrazi versus Affinity?
Well, this looked like it was going to be a blowout for Luis Scott-Vargas. He took the first 2 games very quick, convincing fashion, but then Pascal clawed his way back. We got to a 5th game, and it really went back and forth there for a while. And there were a couple of different lines Pascal could have taken, maybe tried to go for the Infect win, but instead, kind of lightning helixed a couple creatures with cranial plating and his Vault Scourge. Got to a place where maybe he could start to try to claw back, but Luis finally drew the lands he needed and was able to reality smash in Game 5 to advance to the finals to face JC Tao.
Yeah, in the end, Matej land was very important because we saw in Game 4, Luis had to mulligan all the way to 4, and that's what allowed really a Game 5 to take place. And at the end there, it was all about, he was short a land, then a land got blown up, then he was short a land again, and then there was that window where a land off the top would absolutely seal the deal, and that's what happened.
Yeah, it was very interesting because since Pascal played the Thoughtseize in that game as well, he knew about all the cards, so he had to take a guess. Is Luis going to draw a land, or is he not going to draw a land?
Right.
In the end, it didn't turn out that well for him, but I think Pascal played the whole match really well.
Yeah, I
He
agree.
got into spots that other players wouldn't have gotten into, and I'm pretty sure he's going to go home happy with his first Pro Tour top 8 anyway.
Well, let's take another look at the bracket if we can, because both those top 2 quarterfinals featured Team Channel Fireball with Shuhei Nakamura and Luis Scott-Vargas up against the team of East-West Bowl, Brian David Marshall.
Rich, I am getting flashbacks to Worlds 2011 here when Junya Ianaga, my nemesis, managed to make his way through the bracket to become the world champion, taking down Channel Fireball member after Channel Fireball member after Channel Fireball member. And you know what? We're on pace. We have the possibility here of JC Tao being able to eliminate 3 Channel Fireball face-to-face game members in 3 straight steps along the way here. You know, Shuhei Nakamura in the quarterfinals. You have Luis Scott-Vargas in the semifinals, and it's possible that even Flock could reach the finals in the other bracket, and you know that could be 3 straight matchups against this colorless Eldrazi deck, which, you know, it looks like JC Tao matches up against very favorably.
I would also say it would be also an amazing achievement if JC Tao could face Andrew Brown of the same team, of the same deck in the finals, because there's also another possibility. And what a way to enter the pro scene. That would be for the East-West Bowl team.
That's true. Even Flock already has to get past that deck once in the semis if it matches up that way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's look at the brackets. Let's bring you the storylines. We've got 2 semi-finalists. They'll be back this afternoon. JC Tao and Luis Scott-Vargas will go at it in semi-final 1. But now let's turn our attention to quarterfinals 3 and 4. And we begin with the number 3 seed, Andrew Brown, on the blue-red Eldrazi deck. There you see Andrew Brown. He's 23 years old, already got 40 lifetime pro points. A handful of those come from being the champion of Grand Prix Denver in 2015. But although this is his first Pro Tour top 8, 3 out of his 4 Pro Tours have been terrific. 11 4-1, 10-6. Now the top 8. Only 1 miss in 4 attempts. This is someone who really does belong on the big stage. And why don't we take a look at his list? If you weren't with us for our first 2 quarterfinals, you will not have seen this deck in action yet. So, Matej, talk us through, if you would, this new blue-red Eldrazi deck.
Yeah, so unlike the version of Channel Fireball and Face-to-Face, it is based on the blue and red colors, so it can take advantage of some of the other Eldrazi that are available in blue and red, such as Drowner of Hope, Eldrazi Obligator, and Eldrazi Skyspawner, as well as Vile Aggregate, some of the more surprising cards that we've seen this weekend, and just overall, add to that the good colorless Eldrazi, and you have a really solid deck, and it's been performing very well this weekend.
If there is a card on that list that you are most surprised to see making it to the top 8 of a Pro Tour, what would it be?
We actually had this discussion during the quarterfinals as they were being played, because I said Vile Aggregate, but a couple of other people said, oh, Eldrazi Skyspawner, and then no, Eldrazi Obligator is the most surprising card.
Yeah, everyone had a different card that they were surprised by, but Vile Aggregate has been compared favorably to Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
They're like, I had a bigger creature than my opponent. My opponent had a Tarmogoyf. I had Vile Aggregate. He couldn't attack me. You know.
Yeah, extraordinary stuff. All right, so that's Andrew Brown playing a blue-red Eldrazi. On the other side of his quarterfinal matchup, here is Patrick Dickman of Germany. Now, we've put the Affinity aficionados. That's a kind of unofficial team, we might say. We'll get BDM to talk about that in a moment. 26 years old, Patrick Dickman. Closing in, he'll be over 100 lifetime pro points by the end of this event. It's his 2nd Pro Tour top 8. The other one was in Modern. And you know, a lot of people, BDM, they say when we talk about someone as a Modern master, are we being disrespectful to them because they're just great players? And you know, maybe we shouldn't talk about them in a Modern context, but I see it more as, yes, of course he's a great player, but he's maybe one of the 2 or 3 best players on Earth in this particular format.
And seems to really enjoy playing Modern, seems to enjoy thinking about Modern. This is not someone who ended up on Affinity because, oh, well, I'll just play Affinity, right? Like, you've certainly heard that discussion when you're talking about playtesting, right, Matej? Like, people are just like, oh, I don't know what to do, I'll play Affinity. Patrick Dickman knew he was going to play Affinity before Splinter Twin was even banned, despite the fact that his last top 8 came with Splinter Twin. So he's someone who really enjoys playing Modern and knows the format thoroughly. And I think, we've seen that this is a format that does continually put certain players forward, Li Shiqian being another example.
Well, why don't we take a look at his deck list? He is playing Affinity, as BDM mentioned, and you see, this is pretty straightforward stuff. These are some of the greatest hits that we've seen down the modern years. Arcbound Ravager, we've been playing with, right since the dawn of the modern format. We've already seen one Affinity list go down to Eldrazi, but that was Luis's colorless version. Matej, what's your sense of how Dickman's Affinity might fare against the blue-red Eldrazi of Andrew Brown?
I think I talked to both Patrick and Andrew Brown, and it feels like game one should be in Affinity's favor. However, the sideboard Hercules recalls from Andrew Brown will be very, very key, and I think it's not going to go in favor of Patrick Dickman.
He also has sideboard chalices on the play, so that's kind of interesting as well.
All right, so that's Andrew Brown against Patrick Dickman. And then at the same time, and this is what we're going to start with for you, we have Even Flock against Frank Lepore. So let's take a look at our fourth quarterfinal matchup, and we'll take a look, if we can, at Even Flock of Slovakia. From Team Face-to-Face Games, the 30-year-old in his third Pro Tour top 8. He is, of course, a Platinum Pro. And as you see, in addition to being a Team World Champion and a Grand Prix Champion, well, he has the whole suite. He's a Pro Tour Champion from Magic 2015. Now, Matej, I'm from England, BDM's from America. Where are you from, Matej?
That flag seems kind of familiar.
Kind of familiar.
I'm from Slovakia as well.
All right. So you know Even better than almost anyone. Tell us what it means to him to be back here on the Sunday stage.
He did have a very good run with the Pro Tour win in Portland, and then another top 8 in Honolulu, back-to-back, great success. He's been not maybe focusing that much on Magic with other life issues, but like for this Pro Tour, he did a very important step, I think, in his evolution. He left Team Cabin Crew to join Face-to-Face Games, and I think the testing with that team really helped him to achieve the top 8 again.
Do you think even someone who would settle into like a deck preference, like we always think of him as a control player, is he someone who would sort of default to a deck that he feels like is his personal style, and maybe switching teams lets him now play the best team deck as opposed to like making his his version of control for a format, or is that not something that happens in Modern?
No, I think Ivan is always going to try to play the best deck that is available, no matter the style, and he always leans on good teammates to help him choose the right deck. Before his successes before all came through with the help of Stanislav Civka, his best friend, who is now not playing at Magic anymore, but he is now the new teammate that have really helped him to choose the right deck. And he went 9 wins and a draw. I mean, almost can't get better than that,
yeah,
right?
Extraordinary. Now, let's take a look at Even's deck for you. This is the colorless Eldrazi deck shared by Shuhei Nakamura and Luis Scott-Vargas. So we've talked about it. You're going to get familiar with it as the day goes on. The Mimic, the Endless One, Matter Reshaper, Reality Smasher, 4 of almost everything. You look, and the only 2s are split between Spellskite and Ratchet Bomb. Everything else just as full-on maxed out as you can get amongst the spells. And then all those very powerful lands, Blinkmoth Nexus, Temple, Eye of Ugin. And watch out for those Ghost Quarters. They do a lot of things in this top 8, for sure. So that's Even Flock, and he is up against Frank Lepore. Let's take a look at Frank's profile in Magic, a real community builder and leader, 33 years old, and you see 6 lifetime pro points. This, astonishingly, is Frank's first Pro Tour, and he's made it to the top 8 at the first attempt, courtesy of that Grand Prix top 8. And you see, he did fantastically in draft 1 of our true limited masters at this Pro Tour. And if we take a look at his deck now, you'll see this is the third phase of the Eldrazi. We've seen pure colorless, we've seen blue-red. BDM, what's going on with Frank Lepore's processor Eldrazi deck?
Well, you know what? He is really looking to exile cards from his opponent's graveyard with Relic of Progenitus and Scrabbling Claws, and then take advantage of that with Blight Herder, looking to take advantage of that with Wasteland Strangler, and really get some extra, we see that there's not a lot of room for spells in these decks, so like having these creatures that also function as spells.
I think a very good thing for Frank to have in his deck is the 4 Drowner of Hope, especially alongside Blightherder, that we already saw the Drowners do really good work against the other decks. So I think Frank might have a slight edge in this matchup.
Right, the other Drowner of Hope decks run a little Scion Light,
Yeah.
where this has more. Also, I'm interested in seeing if Worldbreaker can take out a key, like, fast mana piece in a mirror match.
Well, I have to say, if nerves play a part, I fully expect Frank Laporte to win this, because even though Even is super smooth, Frank survived yesterday with amazing grace and dignity under the fiercest of pressure, from 11-1 to 11-4, 12-4, and made it in. He's in, and he's in no mood to stop now. It's time for the second set of quarterfinals here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch.